I want to talk about shakti. I never knew what Shaktipat was until I met Rudy. Even as he spoke about it, it wasn't something I cognated as much as something I experienced. And until I met Rudy, I don't think I could have conceptualized it. I think I've described it a fair number of times, but my first class with Rudy was in his home apartment building on Hudson Street in New York, a converted funeral parlor, actually. And in the room where they had conducted funerals and where they used to put caskets, a little bit elevated, Rudy would sit. And this goes back a ways, it's like 1967, but I would go to his classes and I would sit in a chair and try to be quiet, try to do the breathing exercises that Rudy had offered us. And then he would look at me. And when he looked at me and I looked at him and I could sense he was looking at me, my body went like that and fell on the floor. I had never had that experience before. Nobody had ever looked at me in that way. I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't understand it at all, but I felt it. And it happened over and over to the point, as I've described, where I would start sitting on the floor because falling off the chair was a bigger drop, although I never got hurt. Still, the exchange of energy, the shakti pot, was so powerful and in many ways transformative. It took a while to really understand that, in a way, it was a massive dose of consciousness and love. And it was just going into my system, which was in many ways closed. Could say corroded, but I don't know if it had gotten that far. Blocked, yes. Not able to absorb it, yes. Partly that's responsible for all of the incredible reactivity I had to the Shakti pot, because it would hit blocks inside me that I didn't even know were there, and it would blow them open. And the energy flow, which is remarkable, started to find its way into the system. And of course, Rudy gave me a system to be able to experience what it was and acknowledge what it was with a kind of roadmap. And he described it, of course, the chakra system, centers that are receptors, if you will, for Shakti. And as those centers open and become available, especially as you go through the whole system, you start to feel a kind of enormous flow of energy moving through you. And at some point, it rises up again, and then it begins to circulate. And at some point, you begin to be capable of sending it out into the world. You also become very capable of responding to it as a kind of guide for your life, because the flow of Shaktipat is not limited to sitting with the teacher. The teacher is the person who helps you get in touch with the flow or lack of flow that you have. And if you have a lack of flow and the teacher is awakened enough to allow this energy to express itself, open enough, it will go exactly where it has to go into every student and do the job. And then the student's job is to sustain it, to keep open, to be consistent, if you will, with it as a practice, because it is a kind of treasured gift to have that kind of flow in life, because it allows so much expression in the world, in the manifested world. For me, it served in so many ways. One, it allowed me to love people. I already cared for people, but it allowed me to really love people. It allowed me to receive guidance, if you will, about how to move through my life. And it also, in terms of my career, it became the inner expression, the voice of how to share in some dramatic narrative way the Shakti experience with other people. So the particular capacity I had or gift I had was a writer. And I was able to tell narrative stories that touched, people would call it emotion. My Aunt Esther used to say, why do all your movies make me cry? But it's more than emotion. It's really an opening to connecting to the source of Shakti Pat. And then the question becomes, well, what is that source? Lots of people will give you names for it, everything from God to consciousness to presence to higher power. I kind of accept all those names. Rudy just called it the guys upstairs, but whatever it was, there was something greater manifesting in the materialized version of my body, and then using my body to send it back into the world because it seemed that the world wanted or needed it. So I was able to use it in story form to talk to masses of people. And as it opened up more and more deeply, I was able to teach one-on-one or to the groups of people sitting here, and to send Shakti, which is this exquisitely sweet, touching, loving, animated, conscious energy into people, and to have it arrive where it needs to go. And I, Bruce, as every one of you knows, is a very limited person. I'm just another human being. The only difference between me and other human beings is somewhere along the way, I was initiated into a larger consciousness. Of course, you all know it was a psychedelic moment. Whether that enhances or diminishes it, I don't know. But it clearly made me a witness to the bigger picture, the non-manifested universe that, in a way, brings this into being. And so I, being connected to that and then searching like mad to figure out what that was all about, finding all sorts of teachers who didn't connect with me, and then finding Rudy, who connected, not intellectually, because that's not my best gift, but energetically. Pow, energy that speaks, energy that you feel, energy that directs. And when you connect to that energy, you become a vessel for this greater force, and you become a conduit for it, if you can do that. Now, not everybody is meant to sit and teach it. That's a particular kind of construct. And if that's where you're supposed to go, great. But it can be taught because it is experienced in the world as love and kindness. So you don't need to know how to function in a spiritual teacherly sense to serve higher energy and to give Shaktipat to people. You simply do it by attending to them with a kind of care and compassion. And I heard a line yesterday that really moved me, from Baba Ram Dass. And he said, we're all here just helping walk each other home. And I really love that line because it diffuses the mystical, hierarchical nature of the whole teaching. Shaktipat, in its best form, I think, I love that we do it in class, and I love that it's so directed and so focused upon and so immediate. But You can use Shaktipat all day long with every single experience you have with other people, and very significantly with yourself. You can allow this energy to go into you, treat you well, calm you down, open you up, liberate you, love you, all of these qualities that so many of us often direct at others can be directed at ourselves. And then, of course, the more it opens you inside, the more you can give to people around you. And you can be a Shaktipat purveyor for the world. You don't have to do it with movies and TV shows and all that kind of stuff. You just need to do it with what and who is in front of you. And the real teaching, and this is so important, the real teaching is how to maintain that flow without reacting to the lack of response that it often will create or often comes back. You can be kind to people who don't return the kindness. You can live with people who never manifest the love that you in a way deserve or would love to have, but maybe have limited nature. You can have children like that. You can have grandchildren like that. You can have cousins and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters like that. But that in no way limits your capacity and your, I'm going to call it obligation, to give them Shaktipat, kindness, love, consciousness, attention, listening, hearing, being present with them. This is the core element of this practice. If you are failing as a human being, it's not because you didn't get the job you wanted or aren't making the kind of money you wanted to make, or because your kids are having problems in school, or I mean, all that stuff which we often look at as our failure. Failing is the inability to share your goodness with another person. That's failing in life. And you will pay a price for that. Now, I talk about paying a price as though it's some future event, but paying a price, honestly, is present tense. If you are closed, if you are not loving, if you are not present, if you are not kind to people, you will be the victim of that closed, locked in, unconnected experience that is so complicated in the human journey, because life offers us beauty, love, gentility, awareness, and it offers us pain, suffering, darkness, ignorance, all of these other things. And we're all somewhere in the middle between these forces working on us. They work on us personally, socially, culturally. We have all of these things going on around us all the time. The only mechanism for dealing with the world and with manifested world is to find this opening inside that connects to the unmanifested beauty, truth, magnitude of presence that is so beyond or so equal to the outer. In other words, you cannot live a full harmonized life if you haven't found the Shakti experience in yourself and shared it with others. It will be a very limited, very selfish, very egotistical, very unsatisfying existence. And life is going to challenge all of that. It always does. And there are periods that are more challenging and less challenging. And of course, my talks of the last year talk about the more challenging stuff coming forward. So it brings a little bit of urgency, or maybe a lot of urgency, to getting this to work. How do you get Shaktipat to work? Well, the simplest version is meditate. Sit still for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm not going to tell you the timing. Rudy said, look at a picture of him, or look, and I can say, look at a picture, I suppose, of me. Just look and take those breaths into your heart and into your navel chakra and ask for help. to surrender. And that begins a process that makes you quiet, opens doorways, allows you, invites you in, and helps you see, oh, that's where it is. That's where love is. That's where shakti is. That's where empowerment is. That's where intuitive nature is. That's where articulate capacity comes from. All of that stuff is in you, but you got to go there. And if you don't go there, then you can try to do it through day-to-day life, because most people don't know about meditating or don't know how to meditate. So then the teaching is be good, be kind. The thing about be good and be kind is that it is real spiritual work. And it will open these channels, whether you're deeply aware of them or not aware of them. So if you're with people and you can't find your connection, or you're with people who need help, helping them by being kind to them elicits a kind of response, which is a kind of shakti response of like, oh, thank you. Thank you. That was very sweet. Thank you. That really helped me. Trust me. You do that. Try it with, the people at the supermarket, wherever. Open a door for somebody who's struggling to get into the car. Whatever the thing is, watch what it does. It actually elicits a opening. They don't know it's an opening, but that tiny little opening may take them further into the day and have other little openings for other people. And of course, this ripples. It just ripples out and it serves life. But if you want to be a real servant of and a vessel for this enormity of Shakti pot, which really is enormous, do your meditation, consciously open these spaces, express to the universe your availability. You can do it verbally. You can do it by just doing the work. And one of Rudy's wonderful teachings was do the work. Rudy really understood that the world is here for a reason. And to try to slip through it as easily as you can is not it. It's work. It's build a foundation. It's work and build the things you want, build relationships with people, do the efforts involved, which is material and also immaterial. The immaterial being, be a good person. Just be that. And yes, it's becoming, I know, redundant to say it week by week, but most people will forget this message within 30 seconds of turning off the screen here. And because we are so forgetful, because other people come in and knock us off our game so quickly, that if you don't do the practice, it's no good. It won't work for you. So all I can say is life in the human body is an unbelievable gift. Materialized life is exquisite. It has beauty, it has ugly, it has power, it has emptiness. It has all of these forces, and you are in it, and you have been brought into it, manifested into it for some reason. There's not by chance that you happen to be here. And your ability to serve this phenomenal tonality of being with great vocal skill, with great harmonic sort of investment, you become the voice of it. And all I can tell you, because of knowing who I am, as my body ages, as my mind ages, as I'm evaporating so much into the universe, I'm still here talking. I'm still here sitting doing this class. The manifested person this morning kept saying to Blanche, I don't know if I want to do this. I probably have been saying this week by week. I don't know if I can still do it. I'm so tired. My body's getting so old, all that stuff. And then I sit down here with you because you showed up, and Shakti. I am as lucky to get it as I think you are. We're all somehow blessed by this larger knowing, this larger flow, this incredible awareness of the uncreated, unmanifested world that is making itself known here and now in this. This world is an amazing creation. It is amazing. Having life, having the ability to touch, taste, smell, love, fear, all of those things, is an incredible thing. And there is a struggle to be had. And I, at this point in my life, am feeling more struggle than I've ever had, in a way, because of aging, because of body stuff, mind stuff. It's really hard. There's a sense of loss and sadness and grief. And I look at all of that and I go, how can I teach this to people? How can I sit here when I struggle with this stuff? And then the answer that keeps coming is, one, you're human. So forgive yourself, every one of you, for being human. And two, open yourself up and discover the part of you that is transcendent of your humanity. And it is amazing. It is completely amazing. I lost a dear friend yesterday who passed away. But passed away with such grace, such openness, such love. Someone who had been doing this work for a long time. And I wrote her knowing I'd never have a response, but just thanking her for the grace of her departure. She knew how to do it. She knew how to let go. She knew how to move herself to the end with simplicity and quietude. And every step along the way was a teacher. And I just watched it. And I just thought, this work works. It allows us to live a full life and leave it in a state of something approaching contentment, but mostly acceptance, just accepting. This is a limited ride. We get what we get. But if you have experienced and if you have manifested shakti, not that it necessarily gives you a blessed anything, but it allows you to witness the fullness of this exquisite being and say thank you. That's worth it. Any questions? George.
It's not a question. I just want to express real gratitude for your teaching, Bruce. It really is. I've sat through teachings with Rinpoches and with Rudy, and you say it probably as good as anybody ever has. And thank you for doing that.
Well, George, thank you for being such an amazing listener and purveyor and expresser of this exact teaching. That's all I can tell you. We're in this together. You saved my life the morning after LSD. You continue to, you brought me Blanche. I mean, it goes on, but what is happening here is not limited to me. I see it evolving in you. I see it evolving in so many people. And all we are doing is really living the teaching and thanking each other for doing that. So my thanks go to you as well. Thank you.
I just also wanted to say thank you, Bruce. I sometimes get the same feeling like, oh, I don't want to go to class. It's a sunny day. It's nice. And then the dog sits underneath the computer just as it's 11 o'clock. And I realize, she knows. And I can feel it's the ripple effect that you talked about. I did want to ask you though, when you do different things with your hands and are you pulling energy through or pulling things out, or what do you see?
All of the above. It's called mudra.
Mm-hmm.
I was never taught mudra. Rudy's, as close as he got to mudra was touch, physical touch. He didn't do that work very much, but he would at the end of class. It was really interesting. Or he would walk through the class and touch us in different spots, and everybody would just completely, not be knocked out by it. This was toward the later part of his teaching. If you ever watch the Rudy movie, the beginning of that was right there in that movie where people came to hug him and he was touching them and they were all falling on the ground one after another. And it was really dramatic and kind of exciting and away going, oh my God. It was a little bit like watching a Christian church where they do all that hands-on stuff, but it wasn't particularly Christian, although maybe it was, but it was really so extraordinary. The mudra work that I do, and I've never read about it really, but I can tell you, I am directed through a sensation inside, which is really potent to move the energy, and it moves it for the person I'm working with, and it knows what to do and where to go. Sometimes it's digging inside and getting rid of blockage. Sometimes it's like a tiny little surgical procedure. Sometimes it's an enormity of movement. Sometimes it's sharing energies between different beings that need to be cross-pollinated in a way. Sometimes it's just a kind of blast. Sometimes it's a kind of moving energy out. It's so interesting. The feeling of this shakti pot delivery system, which is what it is, I mean, I wish I could share it with everybody. I suspect you could all try it. I mean, the experience of touching and then letting go of touch and feel what's still there is really what it is. What as you pull your hands apart, the energy is still there, this touch. And then if you go further and further and you still feel, oh my God, this is still a connection. And then it goes and it does these different things, and it has a complete knowledge of what to do. And I have no idea what that is.
Oh, I love it.
But in doing it, I mean, I'm only going to tell you this, I feel it. I think you guys feel it, but there are times where I feel it having an actual reaction. Much of the time I feel like it's working very subtly, but I don't discount it at all. And I could be full of shit, of course, maybe it's just me moving my hands, but it doesn't feel like that. It has balletic quality. It has a purpose. And I'll tell you, even in ballet, if you ever watch a ballet, movements like this do something to you just on a stage. People do this and you go, and there's this inner response to it. It's not unlike that, only it's more directed. It's absolutely unchoreographed by the person, but by the larger forces, it is, I think, directed and therefore choreographed. So to have that thing come through and affect people is really, really beautiful. And it's, for me, when I was writing movies, typing, and watching words appear and watching this stuff happen was a version of that. It was like this incredible dictation, and I had become a good typist. And it really had bodily, physical sensation, and it got on the page. It got on the page, and then it got on a screen, and then it got into a theater, and then people went home with it, and then, it all came from like that. Do I understand it? No. Wendy.
Bruce, thank you so much for today's talk. It was just so amazing, as always, in the meditation. My question is, how do you remember, when you talked about, we forget and something happens and, in the clarity, obviously kindness trumps everything. It's so clear when it's so clear. And when it's not so clear, it's almost like seems forgotten. So can you speak to remembering in a more holistic way, in a more consistent way, or in totality, in fact, if that's possible?
Well, I'll tell you, it's an interesting statement or question when you're getting to my point in life and Blanche's, where we're forgetting everything. And so memory is no longer mental. It's bodily. Something else is happening. And mental stuff, do the dishes, do these things, certain of them are routine, but then you get to a point where, did I brush my teeth? Or it's like, oh my God, this thing that's operating here, which is supposed to know all this, is no longer knowing it. But when you get to this still pointedness, memory is knowing. It's different. It's not recalling something from the past. It's not reaching out to what was. It's reaching for what is. And the what is will take care of you all the time. It's the truth. The what was the truth, was what was happening. What is happening is what matters. And that's all I can tell you. Don't worry about memory. Go to this moment. What needs to be there will show up.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. Jenny?
Yes. Hello, Bruce.
Hi.
It's so great to see you.
Okay.
I've often struggled with what I've heard about Rudy's passing, that he was on a small aircraft and he was the only person who passed away after it crashed. And then people said to me things like he actually willed his death because he felt, in effect, he had spun himself out and he had delivered as much of his inner self as he could. But the question that's always been in my mind is, why would he have done that when there are so many more people that he could have impacted directly, face to face? Why would he have wanted to go before, the bodily organs,
Well,
fail or
let me
something?
answer that quickly by just saying I never heard that story before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know that he wanted or planned that departure. I know he knew he was leaving because he had told other people, I was not one of them, that he would be killed in a plane crash that weekend. He was on his way to Europe, and I think that was in his mind. He knew stuff in a way that we all kind of know stuff, but don't always listen to. But I don't think it was his choice or his wish or his inability to hang around to give more. I think what Rudy really, really wanted in life was to be of service as long as he could. And he left behind him some amazing teachings and some good teachers, and some teachers who were less than good in a way, people who may have egotized the experience of teaching. But Rudy didn't do that. And what he really left was shakti pot to all of those who had ever experienced it. And they could go into the world and use it well. Some, I think, really did, teaching or not teaching. But I don't think he in any way decided it was time to leave the world. I think the world decided it was time for him to leave. And however that works, you guys have heard me enough think, maybe you haven't, but I talk endlessly about thinking my time is coming at any second. And that's been, in a way, my nature for quite a while, but it's become more so as I've gotten older and frailer. And but we don't know. We simply don't know. And I don't think Rudy really knew, except for the plane crash idea. Odd that he would have been expressing that to people. Odd that it would have happened in a plane 3 days earlier. But all I can tell you is Shakti and Shakti pot don't belong to Rudy or to any person at all. Every one of us is a vessel for an opportunity for that expression of energy for other people. And I don't think you need to look at Rudy as anything other than a transient version of an enormity of energy expression in the world that's still there. And, I can only say I continue to express what I was taught by Rudy. Every one of you who walks around has that lineage, and those lineages go back beyond Rudy. So we're all, somehow or another aligned with this greater energy, and we should find any way we can to be responsive to that, to be grateful for that, and to live it. That's all I can tell you. Anyone else?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I remember when I was sitting with you in class, physically, here in Los Angeles, when you looked at me, I felt, this huge, my heart would start beating quickly, and I would almost have the same reaction without falling. But that was the same thing, wasn't it? It was the blockage that was.
The fact that you felt it is why you're still here. You got something, and people who come back to this class either have a great wish and haven't gotten anything, but that's kind of weird, or you had a great wish and you got something that you want to keep getting, which is Shakti pot. The illusion really is that it's coming from me, and I am nothing but one form of presentation of that. I would love every one of you to stop coming to class and just get it. I have other things to do on Sunday. On the other hand, I am told very deeply inside, show up, share this thing. Don't be dependent on Bruce in the same way that my dependence on Rudy was misguided. He gave me everything. He really gave me all of this teaching But I imagined had he stayed alive, I would have been sitting in his class to this day, still thinking Rudy was the conduit. His departure was, in the end, one of the biggest gifts ever, you know. And I may have described this before. It's a strange experience, but the day he died, I stayed in the meditation room all by myself, bowing down to the space where he used to teach. Everybody upstairs was crying and doing their number. But I just spent some time there, and all of a sudden I felt I was goosed in the butt. And like really goosed. And I never had that feeling exactly, just bowing down somewhere. And I just felt it was Rudy. And he said, get off your butt. You don't need me. It's all okay. No seriousness here. Get on with it. And that was a great teaching. I mean, getting goosed by Rudy was probably one of the best gifts ever. And all I can say is, you don't need me. You don't need the lineage. You don't need anything, but you do need, I think, to connect to this thing and get as deep in it as you can. Let it inform your life as much as you can. And if you have any extra problems, you can call me or you can come sit in class. I'm happy to do whatever I can do to keep making you more available to this energy. But in the end, it's between you and Shakti, not you and Bruce.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that it? Anybody else? I have two screens, unfortunately, and I'm not sure. Let me look at the other screen. Let me ask again. Anybody else? Okay.
Bruce, yeah, I was going to say, I'm so new to this, and that I've only been doing this a few weeks. But as you know, my introduction to this or a big part of it was the movie My Life, and I always think about when you're doing the mudra, which is a word I just learned today. But when you're doing that, I think of the Chinese healer, and that affected me when I saw it in the mid 90s when I was a teenager, and so don't understand it, but that's what I tend to focus on.
Understanding isn't going to help anybody usually. I mean, things filter into understanding at some point, but it's not necessary. It's knowing it, feeling it, being engaged by it, experiencing it. If understanding comes in, that's fine. You can have a place to put your hat and, go, okay, I get it. But not getting it is just as good as getting it. The big important thing is being it. Just being it. And I will tell you, the biggest problem with being it is it's so big and so massive and so beyond understanding that you cannot get it. And so you have to let go of that idea that, oh, I understand what I'm doing and I get how this works and I can fit it into all the columns and check these things off. And, I think when teachers do that, they're giving a certain security to themselves and to others. And I get the reasoning for that, but I can only tell you, I don't think it can be gotten. I really don't. I think it can be known in a way, usually, and for many people, inexpressible, other than by being good and kind and showing up for others. That I can't put it in any other terms. If you can get that particular dramatic part of you working, which means when somebody causes you to react negatively and you and be kind to them, that's spiritual practice at its core. And you can do that all day long and it will change everything in your psyche. Just don't react negatively to the car that shoves in front of you. Don't react negatively to the person who approaches you badly. Open. And then you'll transform yourself. And in the end, everyone around you really will be transformed by just being in your presence. It's an unbelievable gift. And there's nobody here who's not capable of that. Nobody. So, thank you. I love you all. I really do love you all. And when I say I, partly it's Bruce, partly it's this thing that's standing in the middle and making it all happen. So you are loved. Have a great couple of weeks, and I'll see you then.